As a high schooler, Ken Takakura was a superpower-wielding, ghost-exercising alien fanatic and has saved his friends and his town multiple times, all while being a socially awkward nerd. From elementary school, Ken tried to contact aliens not because he wanted to study them, but because he desperately wanted friends. From a young age, Ken had been constantly bullied and had no friends, so in response he went deeper into the alien rabbit hole. From the Loch Ness Monster to Serpos, Ken learned everything there was to know about aliens, and he was absolutely convinced they existed. However, no matter how much he researched about aliens, they never appeared in front of him, and it seemed like his search for aliens, and more importantly a friend, seemed to be impossible. That is until he met this girl.
Huh?
This girl's name is Momo Isa. Momo was a fiery, free-spirited, and compassionate person, and in some ways seemed like the polar opposite of Ken. While Ken fiercely believed in aliens, Momo was on the side that while aliens didn't exist, spirits did. And this belief stemmed from her childhood. From a young age, Momo had lived with her grandmother, who was a practicing spirit medium. Initially, Momo didn't really believe in spirits, but her grandma would constantly make her do an embarrassing ritual whenever Momo would go outside. With her fist on her forehead and finger in the air, Momo would go out every day only to be made fun of constantly by boys. And she was able to handle this until the boys she liked also made fun of her. Initially, Momo was so embarrassed over the incident, she blamed her grandma and insulted her. However, as time went on, Momo realized her anger was misdirected and she was actually angry over the fact that the boy had made fun of her grandma. This incident helped Momo realize how much she cherished her grandma, which in turn led to Momo's belief in spirits. Even though Momo had never seen or experienced spirits herself, because her grandma was a spirit medium, Momo chose to believe whatever her grandma believed. And this in turn eventually led to her getting powers and also meeting Ken. When Momo was first shown, she is seen in the middle of a breakup. Her boyfriend had been dating Momo only for her body and money, but because Momo didn't offer either of those things to him, he wanted to break up. Momo, in a fit of disbelief, attempted to kick her now ex, but he ended up just kicking her back. Now, why did Momo even date someone like this? Was it because she was into bad boys or into trashy personalities? Well, no, it was actually because he looked like Ken Takakura. And no, not that Ken, but the famous Japanese actor. Momo was a mega fan of Ken Takakura, and her ideal type was someone that embodied that hard-boiled tough guy trope. Because her ex-boyfriend looked like Ken Takakura, Momo was willing to look past his trashiness, and after they broke up, she felt heartbroken. But not about her ex, but over if she would ever find a Ken Takakura of her own. Because she was so heartbroken, she moped around her school, and this was how she met the alien-believing Ken Takakura. While Momo was walking by, Ken was being bullied by his classmates. As one of the classmates was about to throw a magnet at Ken, Momo stepped in front of the bullies and pretended to be interested in Ken's book, which stopped the bullies. After the bullies stopped, Momo left, but Ken saw the situation and someone misinterpreted the situation as Momo being interested in aliens. As awkwardly as possible, Ken showed Momo his book on aliens that talked about things from Obama going to Mars and a potential space war. However, the situation ended up in an argument as Momo didn't believe in aliens, but eventually the conversation turned to how Momo actually believed in spirits. However, this revelation actually led to another argument as Ken didn't believe in spirits, and after roasting each other for a bit, both of them agreed to a bet. To prove their points, each of them would go to a different hotspot, with Momo going to an abandoned hospital and Ken going to an abandoned tunnel. If either of them could prove their point, the other would end up as their gopher. As they both went to their respective locations, they kept talking to each other on their phone, even having a sincere conversation until out of nowhere, a spirit actually appeared.
Oi.
As Ken was going deeper into the abandoned tunnel, a spirit appeared right in front of him. This spirit was a decrepit old grandma whose name was Turbo Granny, and the first thing she said was, quote, "If you let me gobble your schlong, I'll let you suckle my teeth."
Huh?
Ken, not taking her up on the offer, sprinted out of the tunnel and was too scared to hear Momo's instructions over the phone. Momo yelled at Ken to not let Turbo Granny overtake him because if she did, she would curse him. However, her name was Turbo Granny for a reason and she quickly overtook him. While Ken was being gobbled by Turbo Granny, Momo was suddenly confronted by three weird-looking identical men. Out of nowhere, the three men went full sprint and chased Momo down the hallway, and in a few seconds they quickly caught Momo and she woke up chained to a chair. As Momo came into consciousness, the three weird men explained that they were actually Serpoians, which were aliens from a different planet. Unlike humans, the entire Serpo species was made up of only males, so the only way they could increase their population was to clone. Because of this, the Serpos were exactly the same in every way possible, could not evolve, and because they were all the same, things like conflicts and emotions were non-existent. However, the Serpos had decided that they wanted a new spicy life with some change, so they looked to gain reproductive functions or quote, obtain the human's banana organs. and in this instance, they wanted Momo's banana organs.
Huh?
As the Serpos attempted to suppress Momo through psychokinesis, Momo's phone suddenly started to ring, and as the Serpos attempted to turn off the phone, Turbo Granny came out of the phone and bit off one of the Serpos' crotch. As Turbo Granny fully came out of the phone, Momo realized that it actually wasn't Turbo Granny, but it was Ken who had been cursed. While Ken seemed to have a bit of a consciousness, the curse made it so that he had no real control over his body, and he immediately started to fight with the Serpos. Initially, Ken seemed to win as he managed to be a quote banana thief and steal the Serpos' bananas. However, one of the Serpos using psychokinesis was able to pin Ken to the wall. As Ken was stuck, he begged the Serpos to take his banana instead of harming Momo. Ken then went on to explain how he had always wanted to contact an alien because he had no friends and wanted to make one. However, no aliens had ever answered him. In Ken's entire life, Momo had been the closest to a friend he ever had, and so he didn't want anyone to hurt her. However, in the end, Ken was not able to get past the Serpo suppression, and as the Serpo turned to finish its original job of collecting Momo's bananas, Momo had a breakthrough. As the Serpo attempted to suppress Momo again, she had a flashback to when her grandma was teaching her about the embarrassing ritual. The process of the ritual was to gather energy and visualize her chi, and as Momo did the ritual again, she suddenly awakened her psychic powers. Now why did this happen? Because the Serpo had been using psychokinesis to suppress Momo, he had accidentally overstimulated her brainwaves, unlocking her potential. When Momo then did her grandma's ritual, her powers fully unlocked, and she then proceeded to flying psychic kick the Serpo out of his UFO. Momo, with her newly found powers, now had psychokinesis and to a certain extent was able to control living and even non-living things. And as she started to figure out her powers, she was actually able to help Ken achieve powers of his own. Now even after Momo had kicked the Serpo's bananas, Ken was still being controlled by Turbo Granny. After the fight, Turbo Granny attacked Momo, but Momo using her powers was able to suppress and even push out Turbo Granny from Ken. However, because Turbo Granny had taken Ken's schlong, he was still cursed, and Momo had to constantly suppress Ken from going berserk. In the aftermath of the battle, Momo and Ken were able to have a conversation, and Momo eventually learned that Ken's name was actually Ken Takakura. Because of this, Momo became extremely flustered and said that she couldn't accept his name being Ken Takakura, so she said she would call him Okarun from that point on. As she eventually led Okarun back to her house, both of them were attacked by the Flatwoods monster. The Flatwoods monster was actually another alien that had been originally sighted in America, and it was massive, standing a near 10 feet tall. While Momo now had powers, she couldn't beat the alien by herself, so Okarun then suggested that she suppress his curse only in his head so that he could try to control the powers, and somehow it worked. Okarun became extremely fast, strong, and depressed, and by using both their powers, they were able to defeat the Flatwoods monster. Both Momo and Okarun were essentially superheroes and memers.